So we have to start by teaching the start of World War II before Pearl Harbor in 1941. If you looked at a black newspaper from the 1930s, you would see extensive coverage about the rise of fascism in Europe. In 1933, 34, 35, there were dozens and dozens of articles and editorials describing in some amount of detail what was going on in Nazi Germany and how Adolf Hitler rose to power and how he was explicitly pointing to American racial policies to help justify his treatment of Jews in Europe. Even more specifically, black newspapers are making connections between the kind of treatment of Jewish people in Europe, the segregation on train cars, the theft of property, the physical violence, and what's going on in the Jim Crow South at the same time. And so already by the 1930s, there are explicit claims being made that the Second World War has started because they see the rise of fascism in Europe. When Italy invades Ethiopia in 1935, that is like a lightning bolt across Black America because Ethiopia is the only independent African nation at the time. So it figures very prominently in the imaginations of a lot of Black Americans. The fact that, again, a fascist regime in Benito Mussolini's Italy invades Ethiopia and that the world community largely does nothing about it is shocking. And again, the headlines say the Second World War has started. A couple years later, with the Spanish Civil War, when General Franco's fascist forces stage a military coup against the democratically elected government of Spain, there are more than 80 Black volunteers who go to fight in the Spanish Civil War. And that gets covered in Black newspapers all across the country. And so in that decade before Pearl Harbor, for everyday Black Americans all across the country, they've seen article after article, they've been in conversations, they've heard on the radio that the war has already broken out in Europe. And it has serious consequences for the United States, even if the United States hasn't officially entered the war militarily yet. And then on the other side, we have to teach the war as not ending in 1945, that yes, the military battles end, Germany and Japan surrender, but that whole generation of Black veterans comes home and starts fighting for civil rights, that they would never say that the war ended in 1945 because for them, a different battlefield in the war just continued. And so foregrounding the experience of Black Americans really troubles this idea that the war can be neatly bounded from 1941 to 1945. That's really just the American military conflict piece. The broader social implications of fighting for freedom and democracy, both in the United States but globally, really push the boundaries of that timeline in two different directions.